Oh, it's another day here. At the Comeback Team Studios, this is your boy, Bek Lover, and you're tuning in to another episode of Interesting Times on the Bek Lover Podcast, where I gather all the interesting news, all the headlines, anything that's important or interesting, or I think you just need to hear it. Could be gossip, could be a war just broke out, could be about anything. I do all the homework so you don't have to worry about it, and you can tune in here for interesting discussions, news. Make sure you subscribe. I'm available on all podcast platforms. You can watch me on YouTube, Rumble, and on Spotify. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. It helps me more than you know. In any event, there's so many headlines I need to cover. It's almost dinner time here. I'm starving. It's a bright and hot day here in New York City. And I thank you all for your support. You can check my most recent appearance on the David Nino Rodriguez podcast. He's got a huge following, former heavyweight boxing champion. We discussed some of these interesting characters who have been on podcasts like Joe Rogan and Patrick Bet-David, Valuetainment, and Andrew Schultz, discussing the phenomenon of alien life and all this stuff that's going on. And I have a very different take on it. So you might want to check out that episode, and make sure you check out all the other content I have uploaded on this channel, and I have so much more coming down the pipeline. But now, back to the headlines and what's really crazy in the world. So I'm going to start light, and then we're going to get heavy. First article I want to discuss is in The Guardian, over here in one of the states that I've lived in for a long time. New Jersey gamer flew to Florida and beat fellow player with a hammer, says police. Edward Kang, 20 years old, allegedly broke into the home of the victim and attacked him over an online feud. An online gamer from New Jersey flew to Florida, broke into the home of a fellow player with whom he had feuded digitally but never met in person, and tried to beat him to death with a hammer, according to authorities. The allegations leveled by the Nassau County, Florida Sheriff's Office against 20-year-old Edward Kang constitute an extreme example of a phenomenon that academics call internet banging, which involves online arguments often between young people that escalate into physical violence in the real world. Kang and the man he's suspected of attacking became familiar with each other playing the massively multiplayer online role-playing game ArcAge. The Korean game is supposed to no longer be available beginning on Thursday. Its publisher announced in April, citing a declining number of active players. But prior to the cancellation, Kang and the other player became locked in some sort of online altercation. Kang then informed his family that he was headed out of town to meet a friend he had made through gaming. The sheriff said Kang flew from Newark, New Jersey to Jacksonville, Florida. Now, I've lived in a very heavily Korean populated area, such as Fort Lee, New Jersey in my past, and towns like Leonia. The Koreans take gaming to a whole nother level. Now, I'm not trying to single them out, but if you do some research, you'll see that many of them in Korea have taken out their own lives because they lost in these games, or their character lost all the... Because these games, you have to like spend real life time leveling up your players. So there's been instances where in Korea, they literally left their children starving while they were hooked into these games, these fantasy worlds, where they play a character through an avatar, and they have to walk miles and do certain skills to like build up their character's strength and get certain costumes and gifts and weapons and all that stuff. And when sometimes they lose or their character gets eliminated and all that hard work goes down the drain, it has an effect on these people that are mentally addicted to gaming, as if something happened to them in the real world. And sometimes there's money associated to these things also. Like they buy certain weapons and masks and skins, as they're called, which are costumes for their characters. And a lot of these people take it very, very serious. And the New York and New Jersey area was very, common to have what are known as gaming cafes, which are like internet cafes with 100 different, computers, and everyone would play in there. And it got really serious. People play for money. All kinds of things go on in the gaming world that people think, oh, it's just video games. No, it's pretty serious as these people. As this guy, Mr. Kang, who decided to fly all the way down to Florida. I mean, talk about being angry, man, over a video game. It just shows you how deluded and how far off of reality some people are. And this is just, to me, is crazy. Hopefully, that person wasn't injured too bad. Deputies found blood at the home's entrance and in the bedroom of the victim. The sheriff said the victim was brought to a hospital to be treated for severe hand wounds, while deputies jailed Kang on counts of attempted second-degree murder. He's finished. So I hope it was worth it, bro, because you did the crime in Florida, and they don't fuck around in Florida, bro. This ain't New York where they'll let you out after 1 hour because we have evil people that run the prosecution and, to protect civilians. That's why we have rampant crime in New York City. Yeah, you're in Florida, buddy. I hope that game was worth it, man. I hope it was worth it. As they say in Korea, Anya haseo, bro. You're finished, bro. MedicalExpress.com. Exposure to plastics, chemical BPA may raise diabetes risk. It seems lately in the last couple episodes of Interesting Times, we've had articles about them finding microplastics embedded in our penises, if you're a man, and in our organs. And it just seems like plastics are definitely harming us, the environment, animals, everything. There's no doubt about it. So this is another one to add to the list. It may increase your risk of diabetes. I think it's time for us to really get rid of these things once and for all and start, using glass again, glass and maybe carrying our own canisters. But yeah, so if you're at high risk for diabetes, you may want to cut down on the plastic usage for food and water. There's a lot going on, guys. Lately, I've talked to you a little bit about the bird flu, and now it seems like the monkeypox is on the rise. Reuters is reporting the spread of mpox in Africa needs to be addressed urgently, the World Health Organization said on Tuesday, as scientists warned separately of a dangerous strain in the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a critical need to address the recent surge in mpox cases in Africa. In separate briefing, Jean-Claude Udahamuka, I actually think I said that correctly, of the University of Rwanda, who has been working on an outbreak in Congo's hard-to-reach South Kivu province, said the strain spreading there, a mutated version of the clade I mpox endemic in Congo for decades, was extremely dangerous. It has fatality rates of around 5% in adults and 10% in children. This year, roughly 8,600 cases have been reported in the Congo and 410 deaths. I think it's time to stop people from Congo coming to the U.S. right now. Let's kind of learn from what happened the last time around. I think we should halt all flights, and they should be quarantined on the way in. I don't want to deal with this shit. Other things that can destroy our lives. Americans face a higher risk of dengue this year. The CDC has issued a new health alert as global cases of dengue fever soar. People in the U.S. are at a higher risk of catching dengue fever this year. In a new health alert issued on Tuesday, CDC representatives said that the people should be extra vigilant about this potentially deadly virus, which is spreading to people via the bite of an infected mosquito. Okay, that's some not good news right here. 745 U.S. travelers have been diagnosed with dengue, a higher than expected number. An average of about 1,600 travel-related cases were reported for the full year in 2022 and 2023. Common dengue symptoms include a fever with aches and pains, nausea, and a rash that starts out flat and red and then later looks like something similar to measles. Symptoms usually develop within 2 weeks of a person being bitten by an infected mosquito. Okay, so we might want to wear that spray right now, man. It's like, can we live, man? Can we just live? I just want to live, man. I don't want to worry about monkeypox and mosquito bites and things that are engineered by people that we put in power to protect us that was released, I just want to live, man. I just want to live. I want my children to be able to live. I want your children to be able to live in peace and harmony and prosperity. Please, man. It's like that song Jay-Z said, can I live? Some good news. I gave you a lot of bad. Let me give you some good. If you live in Brazil, you can get high legally now. Associated Press, Brazil's Supreme Court decriminalizes possession of marijuana for personal use. Brazil's Supreme Court on Tuesday voted to decriminalize possession of marijuana for personal use, making the nation one of Latin America's last to do so. With final votes cast on Tuesday, a majority of the justices on the 11-person court have voted in favor of decriminalization since deliberations began in 2015. So, they're going to be smoking it up right now in Rio de Janeiro, my friend. Congratulations, I guess, to the Brazilians. Obrigado. Discussing the whole conflict in Israel with the Palestinians, this heartbreaking situation that, in my opinion, has muddied the reputation of Israel permanently in the eyes of many people who may have been either neutral or supported them before everything started on October 7th. I believe their response was excessive in nature, and they've made way too many mistakes, and I think people are having a hard time buying their official version of things and have lost a lot of trust in them. But guess who's up on the chopping block? The Orthodox Jews who have tried to stay out of the conflict. They don't want to enlist in the military for religious reasons, and they may be getting forced to do so, which probably leads up to the fact that this war probably is far from over and is likely going to expand into other countries, as I've said for many months on this show since October 7th. And I'm going to show you why. And they're going to draft them, and they're going to make them go to war. And guess who's bringing the draft back? The USA last week. Oh, yeah, guys, you need to stay tuned, man. If you have a kid that's 16, 15, 18, up to 25, yo, they might be sending your kid to war, man. Wars that we don't need, we haven't benefited from, and has led our country on a path of destruction. Yeah, that war, yeah, your kid might be going out there right now, because it looks like things are popping off with Russia pretty soon, and it's not looking good out there. The ultra-Orthodox, known as the Haredim, in Hebrew, practice a form of Judaism that is marked by stringent religious observance and strict lifestyles. They make up around 14% of Israel's 9.5 million citizens and are the fastest growing segment of the population, because they do have tons of kids, man. Tons of kids. Because they are disproportionately young, they make up 24% of the recruitment age of Israelis. Why don't they serve in the military? Some do, but far fewer than most Israeli Jews. The vast majority do not participate in the country's mandatory military service. For ultra-Orthodox men, studying Judaism's religious texts is central not only to their own lives, but they believe the preservation of all of Judaism and even the defense of Israel. Torah study begins in the teenage years and often continues into young adulthood. It is a full-time pursuit that precludes secular study, participating in the workforce, or serving in the military, as most non-ultra-Orthodox Israeli Jews do. Technically, the military service exemption applied to young men who are actively studying at the yeshiva. In practice, anyone who tells a recruiter that he studies at yeshiva, anyone who presents themselves to be ultra-Orthodox, can get out of service. So basically, it's a loophole, too, for those Jews that are not religious and they don't want to serve 2 years in the army. They can grow their curls out, put the yarmulke on, stop going to the raves, and that's a way to draft dodge. But if you're planning on going to war with all of your neighbors, which I think is what's on the horizon, you might want to start getting those numbers up higher. And why do I think that that might be coming is this article that I can't seem to find here. Here we go. The latest Iran-allied militants claim an attack targeting the Israeli port city of Eilat. An Iranian-backed umbrella group known as Islamic Resistance in Iraq claimed an attack targeting the southern Israel port of Eilat. The militants are allied with Yemen Houthis. Shipping has reduced drastically through the route, crucial to Asia, Middle East, and European markets. International criticism has grown over Israel's campaign against Hamas. The 8-month war has largely cut off the flow of food, medicine, and basic goods to Gaza. So things are really heating up. Israel, Hezbollah, rising concern, real war will break out, reported by Deutsche Welle News, DW. Fighting on the Israeli-Lebanese border was previously restricted to tit-for-tat attacks, but it has been ramping up, and experts say there's more chance of the action that sparks all-out war and invasion. An end to fighting in the Gaza Strip, yes, but not an end to the war. This is what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced on Sunday evening. The conflict would only end with the complete destruction of the Gaza-based militant group, Hamas. Netanyahu repeated again. But once the fighting in Gaza died down, this would mean that some Israeli troops could be sent north of the border of Israel and Lebanon. The Israeli military and Hezbollah, a Lebanese-based group with a militia 50,000 strong, that also plays a significant political role in the country, has been exchanging fire in the areas for years now. On the October 7 attacks on Israel by Hamas, which resulted in the death of around 1,200 people, and then Israel's campaign has killed more than 40,000. Up until now, Israel and Hezbollah have been careful to avoid all-out war. Several days ago, Hezbollah released a video taken with a drone that shows various military and civilian facilities in Israel, including the Israeli port of Haifa. the sites could become targets if wider war breaks out. So basically, this is a powder keg waiting to explode, which probably explains why they are trying to increase their numbers, even in the communities they never sought to draft from in the Israeli military. The reason so many people are against this war, even if they once did support Israel, is because of headlines like this. A Palestinian was shot, beaten, and tied to an Israeli army jeep. The army says he posted no threat. When Muhaddid Abdi stepped outside to see if Israeli forces had entered his uncle's neighborhood, he was shot in the arm and the foot. That was only the start of his ordeal. Hours later, beaten and bloodied, he found himself strapped to the steering hood of an Israeli military jeep driving down a road. The army initially said Abdi was a suspected militant, but later acknowledged he had not posed a threat to Israeli forces and was caught in the crossfire. So it takes you strapping a man, okay, just take a look at this. This may be disturbing to some viewers. Wounded, tied. It took you hours to figure out he's not a threat. And even if he was a threat, if he surrendered, there's like Geneva Conventions, there's, the way you treat prisoners of war, and clearly this is a violation. Now, I'm kind of out of order here. More than 20,000 children are missing in Gaza. This is reported by Time.com. As the death toll in Gaza continues to grow amid Israel's punishing bombardment, so does the statistic of missing children. To date, at least 21,000 children are still missing amid the chaos. 17,000 children who are unaccompanied or separated from their families as a result of the war, and 4,000 children who are thought to be missing under the rubble. We've all seen the horrific images that are coming out from the airstrikes and the buildings that have been blown up, and this is where they lost a lot of support from people who may have supported them before their response on October 7th. CNN reports children are dying of starvation in their parents' arms as famine spreads through Gaza. I'll play this clip from CNN. These images are very disturbing, so please take caution.
Amal, meaning hope, was born 2 months premature. She died after just 4 days, her family says, a baby born into war in northern Gaza.
So this is, what the issue is. People are seeing these images. It's real. There's no denying it. It's not propaganda. It's real innocent life being lost on massive levels. And where many people wanted to look towards Israel as an example of how to be the good guy, supposedly, when you see the amount of destruction and collateral damage, as they call it, it's hard to justify the loss of 20,000 children, regardless of what was done to you first, especially if you're supposed to be the more civilized and bettered person and your democracy and you believe in human life. And it's just no one's buying your bullshit anymore, unfortunately. Yes, what happened on October 7th was horrible. Yes, they had a right to respond. B, the way they handled the response was absolutely horrific. And this is where you've lost a lot of people who just don't want to support that anymore. Now, what's interesting here is Kenya, okay? Maybe Americans want to pay attention to Kenya because the Kenyans were about to be taxed even more than they are being taxed, especially you people in New York and New Jersey that just sit there and take it. But most of you on welfare, that's why you don't care. Like, you're living off the state and you don't have to work and you don't feel the pain of the working man. You just don't feel it. They had almost an all-out war yesterday because they were about to do a tax hike. Statistically, whenever a population is taxed more than 40 to 50%, revolt always occurs. America's on the precipice, really, with this type of stuff. Pay attention to this. This is what's been happening in Kenya. So the president, he backed down. He saw chaos. They were about to throw his ass out of power. Okay, that's how serious it is. Why do Americans take the type of taxation we're taking? Our money's being sent to other countries that don't do the right thing. We fight wars that we have not won a single war. Nothing benefits us. We lost in Iraq. We lost in Afghanistan. The Middle East is still a shit show. They still hate us and want to kill us. We're sending billions of dollars to Israel on top of the billions we send them every year anyway. I have friends that don't have clean drinking water in Flint, Michigan. Our infrastructure is a disaster. Average American is hurting. Inflation's through the roof. I can go on and on and on. We're sick of it. The people of Kenya were like, nah, you want to tax us? Fuck you. We're not paying this shit no more. We're going to fucking burn the country to the ground. I got to say, I applaud it. Bravo, people of Kenya. Here we go. They're forcing some of these protesters yesterday. Okay? And the people are pissed, man, because you're taking people's sweat and hard-earned money and just throwing them in like ragdolls, man. These troops. Kenyan army, huh? They're not messing around. They're just throwing them in there. Like, you want to protest? Attack the parliament building. You guys are going down. So, Kenyan President William Ruto on Wednesday withdrew planned tax hikes, bowing to pressure from protesters who had stormed parliament, launched demonstrations across the country, and threatened more action. They were prepared to overthrow the entire fucking system. And guess what? He backed down on the taxes. Maybe some people around the world should pay attention. Hint, hint. What's interesting, though, is while this country's in chaos, and as you saw, for those of you watching my episode, and you should watch because I'm handsome, they have time to help Haiti. Kenya's country's like on the verge of collapse, but they got time to send their army to Kenya. Like, when did Kenya, I always knew them as amazing marathon runners, but the Haitians hold their breath as newly arrived Kenyan police force prepares to face gangs. Anticipation is mingling with fear across Haiti as the country welcomes the fourth major foreign intervention in its history to fight gang violence choking the Caribbean country. Expectations are high. Haitians are scared and tired of gangs that have pillaged their way through the capital, Port-au-Prince, and surrounding areas, killing and doing really bad things to women, and kidnapping thousands of people in recent years and leaving hundreds of thousands of others homeless. So the Kenyans are there. The first UN-backed contingent of foreign police arrived on Monday. They will later be joined by police soldiers from the Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados. Well, I guess the UN is finally doing something that's good, because what's going on in Haiti is horrible for the people that live there. On to Denmark. Gassy cows and pigs will face a carbon tax in Denmark, a world first. Denmark will tax livestock farmers for the greenhouse gases emitted by their cows, sheep, and pigs from 2030. The first country to do so as it targets a major source of methane emissions. Really, guys? Really, these cows farting like this is really destroying the environment? It's not the private jets of the people making these laws, right? How many farts would a cow have to make? Seriously. Are they going to put like how we have utility bills? Like, we put meters to measure how much electricity we spend and how much water we drink from our houses. They have like meters. Are we going to start putting electronic meters on cows' butts every time they fart? Because if I was a farmer, I'd be pissed. I'd be like, I'm not paying $100 per cow. I want a meter. I want to know every time he farts, I'll pay you 1 penny. Because there's no way that cow's farting $100 worth a year. So I don't think it's fair. I think it's stupid. I think it's just propaganda to make people, I don't know, pay new taxes. Now, I've had one of the most extraordinary women in the world on my show. She's the only woman on earth to, at her age, she broke every record to climb every dangerous mountain peak in the world. I still think this sport is very foolish. I can understand why some people fall in love with it and doing something that very few could ever do, and the mindset of like, you know, accomplishing the unthinkable. I kind of get it, but I still think it's so dumb in so many ways because it's so fucking dangerous, man, and you don't get a second chance at life. 4 die on Mount Fuji ahead of climbing season, Japan's NHK. Times of India reports 4 bodies were recovered near the summit of Mount Fuji. Japanese media reported Wednesday, days before the summer climbing season begins. Local police could not immediately confirm the report. Mount Fuji is covered in snow most of the year, but more than 220,000 visitors trudge up its steps, rocky slopes during the July-September hiking season. 4 bodies were recovered near the mount. The bodies of the 3 people were found near the volcano's crater as the rescuers searched for a Tokyo resident who did not come home after he climbed the mountain. Very, very dangerous stuff. Speaking of dangerous stuff, North Korea launched a missile and it failed, reported by many major media outlets. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un announced plans in 2021 to develop technologically advanced weapons, including hypersonic missiles. We know that they just signed an agreement with Russia to protect each other in the event of war. I'm sure some of that technology is going to make its way to the North Koreans, as Americans are too busy debating topics like what constitutes a man or a woman. We are in trouble, my friends. Speaking of trouble, fifth tourist in 4 days dies in the waters off same Florida beach town. This is reported by the New York Post. A fifth tourist in just 4 days died in the waters off the same Florida beach on Sunday. 60-year-old woman visiting the Sunshine State from Missouri was the latest victim of the sea's dangerous riptides. Her death came after 3 men drowned on Friday, one day after a teen died in the Gulf waters. I do not go past my knees in the water. And if the water's too aggressive, I don't go in at all. You must wash your children. You must be careful, guys. It's not a joke. I had to go against a riptide once, and it was scary. I didn't realize. I figured it out quickly, thank God, and I swam parallel. You cannot go against a riptide and make it back to shore. You're basically at the mercy of the ocean. So, scary stuff. Be careful. Speaking of being careful, the Hells Angels, that's the motorcycle crew, an entire chapter was arrested in California in a kidnapping and assault probe. The entire chapter of Bakersfield, California, Hells Angels Motor Club, was arrested as a part of a kidnapping, robbery, and assault probe. Those arrested included 5 active members of the club's Bakersfield chapter, as well as 2 others who are members of Sons of Hell and a motorcycle club that answers to the Bakersfield's Hells Angels. Law enforcement seized 25 firearms, an unspecified number of rounds of ammunition, gang regalia, according to reports. The arrest took place Tuesday morning with the result of joint investigation by the ATF and the Sheriff of California Highway Patrol, also known as CHIPS. This is just a heartbreaking story. A New Jersey mother charged with ending the life of her 2 children. They were only 1 and 3 years old. They were drowned. She does not look mentally, she looks sick. This looks like a sick, demonically possessed person. Naomi Elkins, 27, of Lakewood Township, is accused of, I don't even want to describe how she took out her children. You can read this article on your own. Paris Hilton, the heiress of the Hilton Empire, you know, Hilton hotels. Every time you see a Hilton sign, you should think of Paris Hilton. She's from that family. She looks like Conrad Hilton. I was force-fed medications and abused. She spoke to Congress. Hilton has become a staunch advocate in recent years for better protections for children in youth facilities with her high-profile appearance in Capitol Hill. These programs promised healing, growth, and support. Instead, did not allow me to speak, move freely, or even look out of a window for 2 years. I was force-fed medications and sexually abused by the staff. That's crazy. I was violently restrained and dragged down hallways, stripped naked, and thrown into solitary confinement. Her parents were completely deceived about the treatment she was getting. What we can say is that the school provides a structured environment teaching life skills. I agree. You got to really check in on your family. If they're in rehab or what, how do you know who's looking after them? How do you know they're not sick? People are confined. I've dealt with friends of mine that were locked up for a few days in these mental institutions, and I've had people on my program, actually. I had an episode about that. You don't know, like, it's just, you know, you got to really check in on your family, especially if it's not for, like, real mental, like, you need to, like, know, like, whose hands they're in. And I actually, you know, a lot of things she's done in the past, she was really stupid about. I guess she was young, and she did some disgusting shit, and she had that tape, and always in a drunken state, but most of us were, and she was under the eyes of the public eye, so I guess, you know, who are we to judge Paris Hilton? I want to commend her for speaking publicly about something that is very dangerous and scary that people have to go through. And there's been many victims in that world. So kudos to you, Paris Hilton. I think you're finally maturing, and I think Grandpa Conrad is proud. Supreme Court overturns ex-mayor's bribery conviction, narrowing the scope of public corruption law. The Supreme Court overturned the bribery conviction of a former Indiana mayor on Wednesday, the latest in a series of decisions narrowing the scope of federal public corruption law. Of course, some gratuities can be problematic. Others are commonplace and might be innocuous. Of course, Kavanaugh. The lines aren't always clear, especially since many state and local officials have other jobs. The High Court sided with James Snyder, a Republican who was convicted of taking $13,000 from a trucking company after prosecutors said he steered about $1 million worth of city contracts to the company. Sounds about right. You get a nice kickback, they send you business. In a sharply worded dissent joined by her liberal colleagues, Justice Kenanai Brown Jackson said the distinction between bribes and gratuities ignores the wording of the law. Snyder's observed in a textual reading of the statute is one of only today's courts could love. Basically, we protect our own. If you did it, you'd probably be in jail, folks. Judge slams Karen Reed for smirking at her as she awaits fate in a murder trial. This is funny. Let's take a look at this clip from the New York Post.
Okay?
I actually haven't really.
You've seen verdict slips exactly like this. Okay?
I actually haven't really.
Have you had no lesser includeds?
No, we've always had lesser included, but I have not seen a verdict slip there where not guilty is not an option for lesser included.
Okay. I disagree with you. All right. Excuse me? This is funny, Ms. Reed? All right, we're done.
All rise to the court, please.
Oh, she's in trouble.
All right. Excuse me? This is funny, Ms. Reed? All right, we're done.
All rise to the
So
court,
you're
please.
accused of murder. You're laughing in the judge's face. If you get convicted guilty, she's the one that sentences you. Yo, you're fucked. Feds charge 5, including a man acquitted at trial with attempting to bribe Minnesota juror with $120K. Here's a picture. 5 people were charged on Wednesday with trying to bribe a juror in one of the country's largest COVID cases. Fraud, because people did a lot of fraud during COVID. They were telling the government, I have all these employees, they don't, and they were getting millions and millions of dollars in PPP loans, and a lot of fraud did go on. And a lot of fraud, I guess it's pretty obvious that these people, they made so much fucking money they could try to bribe the jury 120 grand. I guess they got a lot of fucking money they didn't need. Looks like we have some Iranians in origin here. Abdizaziz Shafi Farah, Abdi Majid Mahmoud Noor, Saeed Shafi Farah, Abdul Karim Shafi Farah, and Laden Muhammad Ali. Now, I don't know if they're Persian 100%, so don't fucking throw the book at me, but it looks Persian. Are each charged with 1 count of conspiracy to bribe a juror, 1 count of bribery of juror, and 1 count of corrupting and influencing a jury. Okay? And I don't know if they're freaking Persian, so I want to strike that from the record, but it kind of looks like it. I mean, there's just a lot going on. Another reminder, Julian Assange is back in Australia, a free man. That's made a lot of people happy, including me, myself. Stay alive. Like info, what is that? The Hunger Games. Stay alive, Julian Assange. Stay alive. Better be careful. People might Photoshop my hand and make it look like I'm doing something I'm not. Last video of the day shows a South Korean battery plant explode. Many people lost their lives, and it just shows you how dangerous these freaking batteries really can be, which is why we can't leave them in planes and bags and stuff like that.
Surveillance footage shows the moment a deadly fire started at a South Korean battery manufacturer and killed 23 workers on Monday.
23
the video
people lost their
shows
lives.
smoke.
Now, what's crazy is that these poor workers are in the video trying to extinguish the flames. Like, you know what, bro? You can't pay me enough. Okay? If it wasn't like my company and my fucking, even if it was mine, I'm like, I'm out. Okay? These batteries exploded and all these people died, man.
Coming from a stack of lithium batteries, and in a factory which contained around 35,000 of them, the fire quickly evolved into a huge blaze which then sparked explosions. The now gutted structure was in Hwaseong, an industrial cluster.
I guess in some ways these poor bastards realized how dangerous it was, and if there was that many batteries stored there, they were probably trying to save everyone, man. I guess I would have done the same too. My condolences go to the families of everyone that was affected in South Korea in this battery plant. We need to investigate these batteries more. We need to make sure we're okay and we're safe, especially if they're going to be on flights with us and stuff like that. We've all heard about these situations happening. Please be careful. Don't leave anything close to your bedrooms or anything that's flammable. And these things can explode, man. They just can. Here's your proof. And a lot of people died because of it. So it's just horrible.
Experts say foreign workers in the country face a disproportionate risk of injury and death, and that they take on dangerous jobs shunned by many young South Koreans.
中方已经要求韩方
On Tuesday, China's foreign ministry said Beijing has called on South Korea to find the cause of the fire as quickly.
So it sounds like most of the people that work there were Chinese imported from South Korea. The way people are commodities. And this is another reason why you got to feel bad for migrants, guys. I understand that we don't want them just coming in over the border. Not all of them are criminals. Yes, it's heartbreaking. And yes, it puts our country at risk to just have them come. We've seen what migrants have been doing. There was a 12-year-old girl that lost her life in Houston. Okay? Assaulted and killed by migrants. But at the same time, a lot of times these people are doing jobs that none of us would do or want to do for the money. So what is right and wrong? I leave that up to you. But this is another episode of the Bek Lover Podcast, where you might just learn a thing or two about life. This is Interesting Times with Bek Lover. Hit that subscribe button. Check me out. Tell everyone about me. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your mom, your dad, anyone. I'll see you next time on Interesting Times.